The renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. The world is gonna see that it's Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. It's the only way to be strong in victory. God has clothed us with his righteousness and power, and we live for him in our daytime and hour. We can stand upon the greatness of his word and proclaim the truth. We're gonna make it heard. We've got all the potential power God could ever give. Now we stand up on our legal rights and boldly make them live. The renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. The world is gonna see that it's Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. It's the only way to be strong in victory. We can claim the rights that God gave you and me. We can live above all principality. As we move with God, his power lies within, giving us the strength to conquer and to win. We've got all the enablements his love and grace provide. Now we put that truth within our hearts and walk with all God's might. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. We know that the renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. The world is gonna see that it's Christ in me. We know that the renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. It's the only way to be strong in victory. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me.
Welcome, welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, good people, I am in airplane mode. And gang, today I am joined by a very, very, very special guest. I am talking about the one, the only Esther, the Afro Atheist. Yes, yes, yes.
Drum
yes, finally.
Drum roll.
Yes, finally.
Hey,
How are you?
hello. I am good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm very good. So for those who don't know, my normal co-host, my one black friend, that's actually what we call him, he's getting married. He got married yesterday. He
How
got
nice.
hitched, and so he's got the day off, and we were just fortunate enough to be able to get Esther in here. So this is super exciting.
Yes.
For those that don't know, let's just go ahead and do a quick intro. Let the people know what you've been up to, where they can find you, and what your channel's like.
So I am the Afro Atheist, and I am over on YouTube and on TikTok. I have an account everywhere, right? Just have an
Yes.
account there. But the places where I'm most active on is, well, for now it's been TikTok, but yeah, no, I because now I think I've sort of found my feet again in YouTube. YouTube you seem to have a bit of a problem at first, but now it's all sorted. So I just need to
Nice.
find my feet and see how I get on. But if anyone's looking for me, YouTube or on TikTok, same name, the Afro Atheist.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure you subscribe. If you're watching over on the Afro Atheist channel, you don't know me. I'm Pocket Locker 86, Dr. J Bundy. I'm an evolutionary biologist. I do counter apologetics and community building and stuff over at my channel. So come on over and give us a sub. So one thing
Can
I
I
wanted,
can I just quickly say hello to a
yes.
couple of people that I can see already? I see
Oh,
look at the
yes.
trees. I see Juad. Hey Juad, good to see you. Elvic Bell. El, good to see you. Yes. There's a people that they rock with me every single time. Every single time.
I
I'm
know, it's
thankful.
unbelievable. Fans are incredible.
I'm thankful.
Incredible. Yes. So you do a lot of community building on your channel. I'm always there. I always love coming to your streams and the way you interact with your community and your content so amazing. Um, but I did want to ask you about something. So how did deconversion become so important to you? Because I'm starting to realize it's not necessarily a passion that all atheists or all content creators share. Like a lot of us have deconverted or make atheist content, but it's not necessarily the point isn't necessarily to deconvert people. And I feel like you engage very deliberately and intentionally with the idea of deconversion.
Yeah. So I think for me, a lot of it is to do with my origins, my background. So I was raised in Nigeria. My dad was Nigerian. And over in Nigeria, people are very, very religious, very religious. The majority of the people there are religious. The last time I checked the what religion looks like in Nigeria, 49% of the people are Christians. No, yeah, but almost 50% Christians. 49% are Muslims. Less
Wow.
uh, less than 1% are the others. And so the others include uh, the atheists. They don't even call them atheists, just people that don't believe. So I grew up not knowing what an atheist was. I
Right.
didn't know that there are, in fact, atheists. There are people who just don't believe in God. I honestly thought that that the God belief was innate, but that
Mm.
either you just chose to not worship the right God or you're just misguided. And so you don't really know. So now, just all my life carried on that way until I started asking questions, right? And then realized that there are people called atheists that do not believe in God. And that 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 was that was a shock. But anyways, I followed the deconstruction process through. And when I realized that I'm now an atheist, something I something was birthed inside me. I felt the need to want to say something. How can a whole population of people be misguided? How can a whole population of people be so sucked into
Mm.
religion? How can they not see it? Someone has to be saying something. Someone has to, because ignorance, a lot of people are ignorant. And
Right. Right.
so I feel like I tell people I have earned my right to
Mm.
critique Christianity. I earned that right. And so I will continue to use that right that I have got to critique Christianity. I would not stop because what the religion um, did to me, I'm not pained by it or anything, right? It's not that I'm out here now regretting things, or I'm feeling like, oh, I can't, things have got so bad. But no, 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 no. Because of the ignorance of the people that came before me, that's why I went through the abuse, spiritual abuse that I was
Mm,
put through. No child deserves that. No person deserves any of that. And so for me, I'm thankful that it stops with me. My children don't have to go through that, right?
yeah,
But
absolutely.
still, a lot of people around me are still very religious. And I feel like with time, hopefully they will tune in, and maybe one day, you just never know, they might just, let's even see what she's always yapping about.
Right.
Let's even go and have a look. She's got all these people coming in and talking with her. What is it exactly? And they might just tune in. And I mean, like yourself, you're a sorry, remind me, what's your profession
Evolutionary
again?
biologist. Yep.
An evolutionary biologist, right?
Yes.
Now you understand. So I'm not just talking with just anybody. I'm talking with people that, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they'll be able to tune in. Let's go and see what, at least if they think that I've got nothing to say, right? If I'm just okay, she's just the usual one that just yaps and yaps. But when you hear an evolutionary biologist talking, and he knows his stuff, there might just be something there. So that's why I never miss an opportunity to speak up against God, to speak up against religion, and most especially to speak up against Christianity.
Oh, that is just it's such a gift, and it's such a tremendous voice. And it's like different strokes for different folks, but we have a wide spectrum in our community. And I feel still very passionate about my religious experience, and I want to get people out of it.
Mm,
And I realize that not everybody's there, but I feel a certain affinity, a certain bond for people who stay focused. They like, remember why we're here, remember what's at stake. And I think you spoke to it, which is it's about breaking that generational cycle in our communities. And we don't want the future generation to go through the same things we went through. And the only way to make that happen is to actively intervene. You've got to do something, because if we don't, it's going to keep happening, right? This
it
is they're
will.
they're very good at perpetuating this throughout the family, throughout the generations. Um, Another couple quick questions. What do you remember how long ago you deconverted, and what that process was like, especially if it was sort of before this whole internet YouTube community thing?
The internet is a big part of my deconversion.
Okay, great, great.
Without the internet, I would still be a Christian sister somewhere right now, just come back from church and just
Yeah.
done praising the Lord and hallelujah. Before I continue, I see a couple of people. Steve McRae, manager, hey, where have you been? Ultra, hey, Ultra, good to see you. Captive Desk, good to see you. Logan, good to see you. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Uh,
Randy's here. Yeah,
Randy,
Sumami.
yes, yes. Hello, hello.
Good to see you
Okay,
all.
so the internet is a huge part of my deconversion story. When I started asking questions, where else do you go for answers? When you go to the church, of course, you will get a version from the church. When you open the Bible, you look at the Bible, you see all the problems with the Bible. So where do you go? You go to, of course, the internet, right?
Yes,
You
yes.
type in
Yeah.
questions in there, and you see videos pop up, and you think, let's go and have a look. What's this person talking about? And before you know it, oh wow, there are other people talking about this stuff, right? And so um started tuning into shows like the Atheist Experience. I used to binge watch the Atheist Experience.
Sure, sure.
Um, there were other shows as well, and there was something someone said. They said, when you're deconstructing, you tend to look for people that look like you, that you align with. And what they said was, look, be the face you want to see, right?
Mm,
We go looking for
mm.
people that, say what we want to hear, that look like us, those kind of things. And the person said, be the face, be that, you see, the representative that you are looking for. Because when I thought about atheists and atheism, it's very, very much a male, white male dominated, uh, sort of
Yeah,
space.
space. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, listen, I thought, because I was, should I show my face? Should I be a faceless person considering
Sure,
this kind of
sure.
subject? But I thought, look, how many middle-aged women, African, do you see talking about being an atheist? Not many. I've only met just a few in this journey.
Yes,
And
yeah.
so that's the reason why I decided, okay, I would be a face, and I would, be outspoken. Because then if I could do it, someone else can do it too. It doesn't take you having a theology degree.
Right,
You don't
right.
have to have a master's. You don't have to have a doctorate, right? You can you if I could do it, you can do it too. You can, figure your way out of religion. So yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I would say the same thing. It was sort of a definitely a big part of finding new and better information, finding answers with all my doubts. But I didn't find the community until later. So it still felt very lonely because I didn't have a channel. I wasn't interacting with people. You know, most of the people in my life still identified as a Christian. So in that sense, it felt very lonely. Yeah.
Coming away from religion is a very lonely process. When I turn my camera off, when I turn everything off, there's really no one to talk about this stuff with in my
Mm.
everyday life.
Yes.
There really is
Yes.
no one. Most of them are still religious. My children aren't. But trust me, they don't want to talk about this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
know mom's busy doing her thing, and that's it. They don't, just leave them completely out of it. And so who else would I talk about it with? Right? And so you start to find people that, want to listen to you, want to engage with you. And that's why I've met some people on this walk. I mean, Steve McGray manager has been every step of the way. Steve McGray manager, he's been there. And the
Wow. That's awesome.
community, the
Yes.
community, it starts to form. um yeah, you meet some people who aren't, but that community is very, very important. Otherwise, you're invalidated, right? They make you feel like there's something wrong with you because you stick out like a sore thumb, right? You're the only one who's not going to church. You're the only one who's not, agreeing to what pastors are saying. And so when you find people that are, your kind of people, they are like your tribe. And so if it's very important, because then I feel validated. I feel like I'm not going crazy after all, right?
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
going crazy.
Yes. It's not just me.
No,
Yes.
it's not just me, right? There's other people as well.
So I have a question of the day that I put a lot of times in the chat. You can just put exclamation point QOTD and it'll pop up. But the question of the day is if you had the power to deconvert one person in your life, who would it be?
To deconvert one person in my life, it'd be my brother.
Wow. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. Tell
It'd
us
be my
about.
brother.
Is he heavily involved in the church?
He's not so heavily involved in the church at the moment, but I don't ever see him getting out. I don't
Mm,
think he'll ever be a non believer. When I came out to my family, this was about 4 years ago now, and told them, look, I don't believe. Was it 4 years ago? No, it wasn't 4 years ago. It's about 3 years ago. When I came out
okay.
to them, they have this brother of mine has never had a conversation with me about it ever.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
no, it's okay. We acknowledge what you said. We wish you the best of luck, but this conversation has never been a subject. It's not brought up. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about religion at all, right? And so,
Wow.
but sometimes in the WhatsApp group, you might say things like, "Oh, let's just put everything in the hands of the Lord Almighty," because he's the first, he's the top
The
one, and
oldest.
so yeah,
Okay.
he's the oldest, and so everyone looks up to him. He has single-handedly won a lot of people to Christ. He was very active.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Used to love just he'll see young people out and about doing their thing, and he's out there proselytizing. He has led many people to Christ, and so if he deconverts, I can imagine that that would weigh heavily on him.
Yes.
What
Yes.
about the people that he has led to Christ? What about those people? So yeah, I don't see him getting out. I just can't see it. If that happens, oh,
Yeah, it would be a trip. So for me, it'd be my mother definitely. I used to think that that was the key to getting my whole family out, right? That if my mother got out, and she would be the one that, because she was always sort of the felt like the leader. She was like sort of the most successful, and everybody turned to her for advice and things like that. And personally, I always not always, but I could start to see where she would have her doubts,
mm,
and certainly have a problem with things she saw in the church, or happening in her church, or with the people in her church. But yeah, I don't know. As of now, I don't see it happening. I don't, she's the people in my family, it's their identity, right? And
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
they're the ones that they sort of put everything in Jesus. It's even like the language they use. It's very difficult for them to have a normal conversation, because just the way they talk about their day-to-day lives, it's Jesus woke me up this morning and started me on my way type of mentality. So I don't see it happening, but yeah, I thought it'd be an interesting one, since it's something we both tend to think is important, to see where the community's at. So gang, put in the chat the answer, if you had a person, the power to deconvert one person in your life, who would it be? So Maya's here.
I see someone has already said their brother too.
Yeah, I think that
Um
was.
who was it? It was someone said if they could choose to, they would yeah, it would be their brother.
Hey, AR is here. I think that was
Hey
Logan
AR.
Paul. I said Logan
My
Paul. Listen to me,
my
Logan
my
Fisher.
mom
I'm sorry.
my mom and dad, they're no longer with us. My mom would have been my very first choice, but she's no longer with us.
I
So
see. I
yeah.
see. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, gang, go ahead, put your response in the chat. So let's see if we get through some of this video. So we pulled up a Christy Burke video for you guys that talks about common manipulation tactics used in the Christian church. We don't have to get through all of it, but I just wanted to have something to get our conversation flowing about particular issues. And I think manipulation is something I definitely am excited to talk to you about, because I think that's what makes this all so tough. All right, so let's roll the tape.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where we unpack and deconstruct all of the things that we were taught to believe growing up in conservative, fundamentalist, and evangelical Christian churches. If you don't already know, my name is Christy, and today I want to talk about common manipulation tactics that are used in churches to keep people loyal, obedient, and in the pews. Because a lot of people have this idea that church is a place where you go to find peace and hope and comfort and a spiritual connection. But I would argue that a lot of churches are using an array of manipulation tactics to keep people under their control. And this could be intentional or not, but I think it is happening, and I think it's worth recognizing, because even people who don't regularly attend church tend to think that churches are existing within this kind of divine spiritual realm where they are exempt from social criticism, and they have the freedom to act the way they act, believe the way they believe. And though that is true to an extent, I think that this keeps a lot of people from closely scrutinizing tactics used in the churches, the way these church leaders are treating the members of their congregations. And so what I want to do is I want to take a look at some very common manipulation tactics and compare it to how people are being treated in the church, especially within the conservative and evangelical churches, and how Christian doctrine is being presented in a way that manipulates people into staying in the church, into staying faithful and never leaving. There are thousands and thousands of people that are leaving the Christian church having these shared experiences of having felt as though they experienced some sort of spiritual abuse that kept them from being able to be authentic, to be themselves, and to think freely. And so I want to address that today. People manipulate all of the time. All of us manipulate at some point or another. It's just kind of human nature. But I think that some manipulation can be much more harmful than other types of manipulation. There are definitely levels there. And so what I did is I found this article on WebMD. Now, WebMD can sometimes be unreliable. I think mostly it is reliable. And this is a medically reviewed article by an MD. So I do trust it. And after having read through it, I feel as though this is a really good list. I think all of these kind of hit some form of manipulation. Now, according to this article, manipulation is the exercise of harmful influence over others. People who manipulate others attack their mental and emotional sides to get what they want. The person doing the manipulating, called the manipulator, seeks to create an imbalance of power. They take advantage of you to get power, control, benefits, or privileges. I think a lot of times church leaders.
All right, I'll pause it real quick. And Esther, if you want me to pause at any point, just let me know. But
Okay. She's describing witchcraft.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Because witchcraft, that's manipulation. That's same sort of thing as witchcraft. I don't believe in witches and all these things, but when you think about witchcraft, I think about you trying to control other people into doing your bidding, trying to make them see things from your perspective and not theirs. And even when they have a perspective, you want to make them think, no, they are wrong, or no, you are right. You are always right. So, yeah, manipulation, absolutely. How else would you get people to believe in ancient books that have never been proven to be true? Right? How else? Unless, of course, you manipulate them into believing these books.
Yes. And this is something I struggle with the people in my life that are religious that I care about, because I don't believe that they're loyal to the faith under their own sort of free choice, or that they were able to make informed, have informed consent with this sort of religion. They were indoctrinated, typically really heavily and forcefully, as children. And so that is something that I think gets lost in the motivation of all this, right? Like, I really think trying to deconvert people, while I don't think it's easy, or is something that is a has a high success rate, I do think of it as like a very noble and honorable thing to do. And to try to do it with someone in your life, I think is quite loving, because I think it's so easy to forget that they were manipulated into this. And that's why I thought this was a kind of a cool thing to talk with you about, because there's sort of this stereotype, right, of like the angry atheist, that we're just going around and, there's these innocent Christians and they're just these great, wonderful, loving people, and we're trying to, rip their church and their community out of their lives. And I think that sometimes in those conversations we forget that, no, I think, at least for me, like, I'm acting out of a sense of, I've gone through this and I don't want other people to experience what I've experienced. And I think these people were coerced into this, is what I often say. And that normally we think that it's good to intervene when that's the case. But yeah, sometimes we seem like the big bad wolf.
We do.
AR mentioned, I just wanted to touch this. He said that his employers right now, unfortunately, dad's on the way out, and I've experienced a lot of that. I feel the same way, like, about my grandparents, like, they're actual ministers, and I've always wanted to be able to, like, see them sort of come out of their faith, but I think they're on their way out. It's just not going to happen. But I also want to just touch on the religious employers, right? There's so many people who work in places where the faith is like a prominent part of your work environment. And if you're out of step with that, it can really be uncomfortable, because you can be sort of derided by your colleagues a lot, and you might even lose your upward mobility, right? Like, they're not going to promote you if they don't think you're a good God-fearing leader or something weird like that.
Gosh, I wouldn't want to work with people who are believers. Oh my goodness. Just no, I wouldn't want to do that. Mm-mm. Oh
Yeah,
no,
it's tough.
I know.
It's a tough one
I
when believers control your
empathize.
paycheck.
I empathize. It was AR, yes?
Yes.
Hey, Atheist Mo. Gosh, no, that's not something I would want to do.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. All right, let's see what we get here.
Do manipulate their audiences, their congregation members. And I think a lot of times they do it unintentionally, because a lot of times church leaders are they themselves victims of church abuse, spiritual abuse. It's all they know. They might have been raised in it. It's the only way of life that they know. And so they internalize it, they normalize it, and they perpetuate it. And so it's really difficult to kind of point fingers and say, all of these church leaders are being so intentionally manipulative and abusing their congregation members, because I think it's much more complex and nuanced than that. I think a lot of times people in the church are being manipulated by people that themselves were manipulated, and the cycle just continues. Deconstruction is all about breaking that cycle, being willing to step outside of that cycle and think for yourself and think more freely. So first up in the list is location advantage. It says a manipulator will try to bring you out of your comfort zone and places that you are familiar with to have advantage over you. This can be any place that the manipulator feels ownership of or in control. And I'd say a church, A church leader, that is their place of ownership and control. If a man, usually a man, says, I have been called by God to spread his word, he is speaking through me, and I have died to myself, and now Christ lives through me, and now everything I speak to you is directly from God. He's putting himself in a very high position of authority. He is essentially putting himself on the level of God, whether he wants to admit it or not. He is making himself God. When you get someone who is in a vulnerable position, which a lot of churches like to prey on the vulnerable, on single mothers, on young mothers, on those who have experienced addiction, on the homeless population. There are so many vulnerable populations that the church really likes to gravitate toward, because it's very easy to get someone who's in a vulnerable place, put them in a church, a place where most people see as this kind of this house of God. And you have a man who's claiming to speak for God, giving them this information in a very kind of authoritative way. That is location advantage. That is a way to manipulate people into hearing what you say and following what you say. When you are putting yourself in a position of authority in the house of God, bringing them into that place, appealing to their emotions and their vulnerabilities so that you can convince them of your specific brand or flavor of spirituality. Now, I'm not saying that every single person who brings someone else into a church is manipulating them, though I think that the situation itself breeds manipulation. It breeds emotional manipulation. And I think it's very important to just consider that as kind of a foundation when we're talking about manipulation in the church, because that right there is a very firm foundation in emotional manipulation. And then I think everything else is just kind of branch off of that. Next up, we have.
All right, gang, let's take a pause there. Go ahead.
I was going to say something. When she talked about the location thing, Jim Jones just sprang to mind. Jim Jones relocated all those many people to this remote place where they were promised a whole utopia.
Yes.
We are going to have our own place. We will grow our own crops. We will, we'll be free to worship God and do what we need to do. They sold them a dream.
Absolutely.
And the moment they got there, the first thing they did was take their passports off them, because now you're not going to be needing this, right? And when the people got there, they realized that everything they were told wasn't what they had, what they started to experience over there. Now there was no way of escape, because now they're in this remote place over in Guyana, nowhere to go. How are they going to leave? Right? Some people did escape, but just a very tiny number.
Right.
My goodness, that just perfectly fits that
Yes.
particular example right there.
Do you remember the Heaven's Gate cult?
Yes.
The ones with the purple sheets and the Nikes. They also kind of had, I think, a mansion or something that they all relocated to. I was also thinking about the sort of subtle ways this can happen. So AR mentioned having religious employers, right? That's a serious situation, right? Because if this person starts proselytizing to you or speaking to you in a sort of religious language, what are you going to do, right? You're at work.
Yeah.
This is your boss or your manager. It's going to put you in a situation where they have a certain undue leverage over you. And I think that this even happens with our families. Like, a lot of us get pressured into participating in religious, it could be something as simple as saying grace over a family dinner or going to church with somebody because we're visiting family for the holidays, right? And now we're at their home, we've traveled to visit with them, we've staying with them for a while. We don't want to make things uncomfortable. And so, we probably accept invitations we might not otherwise accept. And so I think anytime you're dealing with relationships, it's really important to think about the venue, right? The location and, how that changes the power dynamic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I remember when the church, one of the churches I used to go to, it was a Nigerian sort of centered church, but here in the UK, they used to encourage the people to celebrate their birthdays in church. The hall is free for you. You can use the hall whenever you want, right? So when it's your birthday, so you find that people will hold their birthday parties for themselves and the children after service on a Sunday, right?
Wow. Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
service is done,
Yes.
during the service, you'll have prayers for you, the birthday person. You'll have special prayers. And then after the service, you see them bringing in the 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 food. Food comes in. Everyone's gathered now in the hall. It's now party time after
Yes.
church,
Yes.
right? Because we've got to keep you locked in. This way, we know that people are not going to be drinking alcohol. Because
Yes.
when
Yes.
they're over in their houses, we don't know what they're doing over there. And so
Absolutely.
I was invited to this in fact they're like a family friend. We met in church, but they became like real friends, and their son was 10. It was his birthday, and it was his birthday in the church. Birthday party was being held in the church on a Sunday after service, and I was thinking, goodness, how am I going to go sit under the go listen to
Yes. Yes. You have to
the
go
BS
listen to
today?
this.
But I thought,
Yes.
okay, it's the young man's birthday, so let me go get there. And of course, it was just the same usual, BS. This young boy, he was called to the front with his family, and he was prayed for. The pastor got out a bottle of anointing oil to pray for him, and he just so generous with that bottle of anointing oil, just over this young boy, 10 years old. Oh my goodness, you need to see the face of that young boy. He was so upset,
Yeah, of course. He's gonna oil
so
all over his
upset
face.
because
Yeah.
10 years old, his birthday is in the church, right?
Yeah.
At a
Yeah.
point, his face, he was just so like he didn't want to be there. I had to pull him to the side and go have a conversation with him because I
Oh, poor
I
guy.
I understood, just I wouldn't do that to my children.
Right. Right.
Hold their birthdays in the church. And so, oh, it was so heartbreaking to see this. And while I was talking to him, he was just covered in oil. It wasn't good.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of the church realizes this, and it's why it's a good leverage point for them to insert themselves at all the important moments of life, right? So there's christenings after we have children, and brisk and whatever, depending on your customs or traditions. And then you have like confirmations and baptisms, but you also have weddings and visiting the sick and all that. And so it's almost like when there's these key sort of life-changing moments and things that the church really wants those things to involve the church or be in the church, and and
Mhm.
and that sort of helps them maintain this location advantage at critical moments in our lives. Yeah. All right. Let's see if we see what's next.
What kind of church did you grow up in?
Oh, that's a
Uh,
great question. So I had the sort of across the board experience. So
right.
I grew up attending a non-denominational church,
Mm-hmm.
like evangelical church, actually quite diverse. But I also went to a pretty much all-white Catholic school, and so I got a lot of Catholicism growing up, and we had school masses and stuff like that. My grandparents were Pentecostal ministers, and so I
Right.
had a lot of experience with their church. And then my dad has always gone to like a AME church. They call African
Uh-huh.
Methodist Episcopal. Yeah. So
Right.
lots of different flavors of Christianity. Yeah. But my
Okay.
primary church was non-denominational. What about you?
That's a good question. Now, this is why Christianity will always be a problem, right? So, over in the part of the world where I grew up in, we didn't do denominations. We did
Mm.
name of churches. We did ministries. We did, what ministry are you in? It's no, you
Okay.
just
Okay.
recently I said, okay, also this is how the churches are divided into. When I was growing up, you were either in you're either in Kumuyi's church, or you were in Redeemed Christian Church of God, or you were in you know in what's the popular ones.
Yeah. So it's like
So
an organization.
yes, they're grouped into um because everyone now has a church, everyone now
Yes.
has a ministry, and so yeah, that's how these churches are identified. It's later on when I started asking questions, then I realized, oh wow, what we have in this part of the world is mainly Pentecostal.
Yeah, that's what we, or at least that's what we see when we see like
Yes,
videos and clips and stuff. We see it looks
these
mainly
are
Pentecostal.
Pentecostal. And within the Pentecostal, there's still all these other flavors to it,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yes, but
yes.
if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said to you, well, I go to the Redeemed Christian Church of God, or I go to, there
Right,
wasn't,
right.
we're not taught about all the different. I wouldn't know what a non-denominational Christian is.
I
That
see.
would just be strange to me. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, I think that we're seeing more of that start to happen here as well, because I feel like we're moving into this very corporate era of churches, and a lot of the denominations have a lot of baggage that I don't think these organizations like, right? So,
Mm.
like the last ministry I was a part of, for instance, they just have like some like generic name, right? And then they like plant churches all over the country and all over the world. So it's moving. Like you have to ask a lot of people, and most people you ask would probably say they don't know what denomination they are. So you'd have to like find the right person in leadership who could tell you, oh, we're actually technically a part of this council or whatever. But they're just sort of becoming brands, if that makes any sense.
Oh, I've just seen a message. Oh, by the
Yeah.
way, just so you know, Catherine Creek has been contacting me on TikTok. Yeah, David E. Taylor Full Frontal. Yeah, she has been contacting me. And when I click on the link, it takes me right to her main account. So it's definitely her. You can see this is the main person. I wonder why she's contacting me. I've not responded to her. Don't see the need to. Yeah, but yeah, she has contacted me a couple of times, twice on TikTok. I wonder why. Catherine Creek, yeah, she is crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Hey,
So
Robin.
Robin said, I don't know who would deconvert among my family and friends. There's one family member that I think would kill herself if she found out that religion is fake.
Mm,
That's just
yeah.
tragedy, tragedy, tragedy.
And listen, I will tell you, when I realized that it was all fake, I I felt like I'd lost my identity.
Mm,
I didn't know who I was in, I didn't know what am I supposed to be doing with myself now? Who am I now?
yeah.
I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how I was supposed to live life. I
I
couldn't.
identified as an atheist Christian for a long time. That's
What?
how deep it was.
An atheist Christian?
Yes, because I had been on this sort of long journey of not believing the claims, right? I grew up when we're children, we're probably mostly fundamentalist in the sense that they tell us a Bible story, we believe the Bible story, right? But as I got into sort of even like high school and stuff like that. Like I said, I went to Catholic school. I had all these different influences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Catholic tradition was very much like not fundamentalist. Like, so for instance, the idea that the creation story in the Bible is borrowed from previous creation myths. That's something I was actually taught in Catholic school, right? So you don't think that, oh, I don't believe Genesis is true anymore, I'm not a Christian, right? You just think no, I was educated that that's a Christian myth, and I'm still a Christian. I just think that was a myth, right? And I had sort of kept going down that path, and then in college I got into science and evolution and all this, and so but I still went to churches, I still was in worship ministries, and so for the longest time I didn't realize I was an atheist. And then eventually I did realize I realized I was an atheist, because for the longest time I just said God worked through natural means, which is the same as basically saying there's no God. But yeah, I didn't realize it. And when I first did, just to your point of the identity, I couldn't let go of the identity. So it was fine. I'm not a believer. I don't believe the literal claims and all of this type of stuff, but I couldn't not see myself as a Christian. And so I held on to the label for a long time just because it was an important part of my identity, and wouldn't know what to say to my family or to say to people. So yeah. And then eventually people just told me I couldn't, that wasn't a thing that I could be. And so it's like, all right, I guess I'm just an atheist.
Atheist Christian.
I know, it sounds so silly.
I've heard someone say they're an agnostic Christian. I've heard that before, an agnostic Christian.
Yeah, they're on their way. They're on their way.
Yeah, they're definitely on their way.
That's funny. All right, let's see what's next. This is good.
Exaggeration and generalization. Manipulators exaggerate and generalize. They may say things like, no one has ever loved me. They may use vague accusations to make it harder to see the holes in their arguments. I'd say the way the church tends to generalize people is quite an exaggeration. If you've ever been in a hellfire and brimstone church, an evangelical church, you have likely heard this exaggeration from the pulpit. All people are sinners. Everyone is wicked at heart. Nobody has the ability to be good on their own. God needs to wash everyone's sins away because we are all born with this evil, sinful nature. Now, even if you don't go to an evangelical church that emphasizes this original sin, the core of Christianity is this idea that humanity needs a savior, that Jesus came and died for humanity to save them. So even if you're in a more progressive church, a church that really doesn't like to focus on original sin, the messaging is still there. You're still having these fingers pointed at you saying you need to be saved from something, by someone. You're in need. And so this idea that all human beings are in desperate need of this savior is, to me, quite an exaggeration, because we're all just human beings walking around, living our lives, making mistakes, trying our best. That's just humanity. That's just existence. But Christians have exaggerated the depravity of human existence and have turned it into this idea that all human beings are born naturally bad and in need of saving. And I don't see it that way anymore. Everybody's got their own view. I don't really see humanity as generally bad, though that is extremely philosophical and existential, and we could get into probably a multi-hour long episode just about that. But this exaggeration of the human condition, I think, is very important to keep an eye on when you're considering how someone could be manipulated into clinging to a religion that constantly reminds them of their inherently bad nature and that everyone else around them is inherently bad. Next up is gas.
All right, Esther, exaggeration.
That's a very important one, because let me tell you, the whole idea of Jesus coming to save us from what him and his daddy are going to do to us, that's one of the things that I could never choose to be a Christian again. Christianity would never be an option.
Mm.
You cannot, on the one hand, be threatening us with punishment. You and Daddy have prepared this place of eternal torture, and now you have come down to come and try and save us from going to the place that you created. And now you come to save us. I'm not sure how that works. You can't be the same one threatening us and then the same one saving us at the same time. No. So just the idea that two people ate a fruit in a garden, right?
Yep.
Two people. It's nothing to do with us. It's been thousands of years ago, right? If we are to believe the claim, right? So but listen, if they ate the fruit, it's nothing to do with me. I I don't know why on earth I inherited that crap.
Yes.
You
Yes.
understand? I'm not
Yes.
even no. And the fact that babies, as soon as they are born in sin. No, that is wrong. That is immoral. You don't do that to little babies. And now even children are being taught. I was, as a youngster, told that if you don't receive Jesus, you go to hell. We were altar calls were made as children in the children church, told to give our lives to Jesus, otherwise we're going to go to hell. And so the idea of this savior Jesus, now we need saving for something that his daddy instigated, his daddy planted the tree, his daddy created hell. I am sorry, Jesus, I want nothing to do with that guy, absolutely none. Mm-mm.
Yes. It's it, the whole thing is a crazy exaggeration. I was thinking about how anti-human it is. You
Mm.
know, that was one of the ways I was manipulated growing up. Was I was taught that this faith was loving and it was the best way to love people. But you realize that that core message is a very negative view of humanity, not one that I find uplifting at all. And this is another issue she touched on with like the more progressive leaning Christians, which I was too, right? Like I sort of accepted science and accepted all these things, and I tried to sort of pick and choose the good parts of my faith and leave out the bad. But at the end, I was still proclaiming to believe this message, right? That we had this thing called sin and that we needed to be saved from it. And that you had to have a relationship with Jesus to be saved from it and these things like that. And I don't know how progressive Christians anymore. It made sense to me then. It doesn't make sense to me now. I don't know how they resolve these tensions. There's it's still Jewish blood magic at the core of the faith.
And also, when you talk about progressive Christians, and I think that Christianity in its most watered down state, in its most progressive, the most vulnerable, the most accepting and welcoming, still believe that they are sinners because two people ate a fruit in a
Yeah.
garden.
Yeah.
And I think that that is abusive, and that is toxic, that you would accept that for yourself. How do you mustn't think of yourself highly enough to think that there is something wrong with you, for the simple reason that you were born onto this earth. You inherited this sin nature, so-called sin nature, right? That you are no good. And then you read a book that confirms that to you, tells you that, oh, none is good except God, right? Nobody can be good.
Right.
You understand? So now, so even the kindest of Christians, even the most progressive of Christians, still believe this crap and
Yeah.
believe that they need
Yes.
a savior. So no, Christianity, yeah, it's still a very problematic religion.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the exaggerated thing is really funny because it reminds me of the Frank Turek thing. Like when he'll interview some college kid and he'll basically say sort of like, have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever told a lie? Oh, well, that makes you a liar and a thief. And this is, you know, we can't talk to ourselves this way, right? We know as people we've all made mistakes. You know, as Uncle Bobby always says, we're gonna take your good, we're gonna
Uncle
weigh it against your
Bobby.
bad. For the most part, people are going to end up, you know, mostly good. They're mostly good. Their good vastly outweighs the negative and harm that they've done. But Christianity gives us this idea of if you've ever done anything wrong, then you're an evil person deserving of, you know, God's righteous wrath, and that's problematic. Like, no, I did some messed up things. I've tried to make amends for them when I can, and most importantly, I try not to make those same mistakes going forward. And I think that's a much more reasonable standard that most of us accept. The other thing it does is it makes Christians focus on problems that most of us don't feel like is a problem. So I know, you know, I've gone to like a lot of churches focused on like sort of like college age people and things like that. And the way they just have them guilting about masturbation and watching porn, for instance, you know, and it's like they spend all this time obsessing over their perfectly natural, you know, desires, and they have accountability partners and they're in their Bible studies and they're crying and they're on their knees in the sanctuary because they're so broken with their sin, right? But none of that energy is going to like help somebody in need that's less fortunate than they are, or, you know, just doing something positive in their community, or even just becoming more educated about, you know, what's going on with conflicts and different struggles in different parts of the world. Like it just creates this very obsessive kind of, very selfish. It's like they're very focused on the self, right? But it really is toxic. And yeah, I think this is a great it's a great point that she made.
Someone said something which I thought was quite profound. They said it's normal for children to have um, imaginary friends. That's normal, right? We would think, okay, the child will grow out of it. So, but it takes religion for people to believe that they have imaginary enemies,
Mm,
right?
yes, yes,
Religion will convince you that there are
yes,
enemies out there that you've never seen. You're just here trying to live your life, but then there is that magical, supernatural, spiritual world that goes on there where all your enemies reside. Your enemies, they're just there, just waiting to just to see to it that your life is a disaster, right? Religion
yes,
will convince you that out there your enemy is up there, he's out to get you, and so you live with that fear. In Christianity they talk about we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. Everything is a fight.
yes,
Fight with
yes,
who? Fight with the spiritual world. We just out here fighting. And we got to put on the breastplate of
yes. And when
armor,
you
and the breastplate. Oh my. Mm-mm.
and that it's insane because what a lot of them do, they take it as far. You talk about the exaggeration. They take it to the point of literally the world is the enemy. Like, you know,
Mm.
everything outside the walls of this congregation and the sanctity of this church is what we're battling against.
Yeah.
And what that leads to then is sort of the Christofascism that we're dealing with, right? Because they turn our civic affairs into a spiritual battleground.
Hmm.
I always say, like, when they overturned Roe v. Wade, they did not say this is a victory for conservative Americans or the South or Donald Trump or the family. They said this is a victory for God, almost
Mm-mm.
to a person, right? And so they'll turn that spiritual battle almost into very real battles, you know, and the rest of us are forced to deal with it.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, there are no enemies out there. There are none. But then people live in. You see, the thing is, i- this is the reason why I will always be very vocal about religion. Speaking up against religion is that people live in this real fear, fear of the unknown, fear of the devil, fear of the spirits, the demons, and all these things. They're coming to get me. There's a demon everywhere. I think it was AR that said, yes, there's demons everywhere. You understand?
Everywhere.
There are no, there's nothing like that, right? And people think that as atheists, we go and worship the devil, right? There must be something these people are doing, right? They must be worshiping Satan. They must be, someone say, cooking babies, right? They must be out there. You know, when you talk about atheists, some people, I would tell you, some people in their minds, they think of every time the atheists gather, they're in this dark room, dressed in all black, and a figure like Satan's, the
Yes,
Baphomet,
yes, yes.
like Baphomet is in the center, and then we're all going round in circles, right? And we're all hailing. So that's what they think atheists do,
Right,
because they've
right.
been convinced and conditioned to think that. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And yeah, all right, let's keep going. There's so
Sorry,
much to say, but we'll get
sometimes
to
I just,
no,
yeah.
no, no, it's perfect. It's perfect. That's what the people came for. I love it.
Gaslighting, and this is a really big one. It says,
All right,
this tactic is
gaslighting.
used by the manipulator to confuse you and make you question your own reality. The manipulation happens when you confront the abuse or lies and the manipulator tells you it never happened. So gaslighting, that word has become very popular in modern times. You see people use it a lot, and I think people do misuse the word a lot. Gaslighting is an attempt to make you feel as though you are crazy. And so when I think about gaslighting and I think about my own personal experience, I think about all of the people that say things like, you were never really a Christian. You were never genuinely saved. You never knew Jesus. You never had a genuine relationship with God. You just wanted to sin. You just wanted to go out and have fun. God never spoke to you because you weren't genuine. It's this tactic of trying to make you question your journey, your intentions, your goals, what you wanted, what you were doing. Because what they want to do is they want to rewrite history. They want to pretend as though when you were genuine in your search for God, when you were genuine in your Christian journey, you weren't. You weren't really seeking God. You weren't really praying to God. You didn't have any desire whatsoever to be a good Christian. You were all about yourself. And so they do this in an attempt to gaslight you. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. For me, it did work for a very long time because I was so susceptible to the manipulation and the gaslighting. The church and the church leaders really wanted me to feel as though it was something that I was doing wrong rather than God not showing up when he was supposed to, because I did my part. I lived the Christian journey. I repented. I prayed. I did the Bible. I did all of the things. The church said, this is how you live a Christian life. I fit myself inside their box. But then when I left the church, they pretended as though I never did anything to fit inside their box. And so they're trying to rewrite history. They're trying to get you to question your own intentions, question your own journey. So that way you get tripped up. You feel insecure in your life. You feel insecure in your doubts and the leaving of the faith. And it pulls you right back in. And that's the goal. The goal is to keep you in the church. And so they're going to say whatever it takes, even if that means lying to you about your own journey, making up your own experiences, rewriting history to get you to question it so that you just come crawling right back to them. Social and emotional.
All right, go
What
ahead.
what would religion be without gaslighting?
That's,
Gaslighting
oh, that's
and
perfect.
religion, it's they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Religion cannot thrive without you being gaslit. It's
Absolutely.
yeah, it is, that is their MO.
Yeah,
Mm.
no, it really is. She was right though, in the sense that it's become a popular term in the last few years. For me, as somebody coming out of religion, though, as soon as I learned about it, I recognized and identified it with it because of my experience in the church. And yeah, that's the name of the game for Christians. And it really is a shame. But this is,
I have a quick question
yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
go for it. Go for it.
So, if people weren't real Christians to begin with, who is a real Christian?
I don't know.
What does that look like? A real Christian?
I you know, I have an interesting thought about this, which is when somebody tells me they used to be a Christian, I think they were more genuine as a Christian. Like, I think the stronger Christians are the ones who are more likely to deconvert. It's just weird. Like, the reason I say that is because so many of us were heavily involved in the church. I mean, either proselytizing, worship team,
Mm,
ministry, missions. A lot of us were reading in the word, we were tithing, and I think we needed answers because
mm-hmm.
we were sacrificing so much.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy if you're more of what I would have considered a casual Christian, which is, maybe you just go to church on Sunday and you don't mind, never mind besides that, or maybe you're just in church a few times a year, but you're just kind of culturally a Christian. You just got your little cross pendant or whatever. To me, it's much easier to sustain that for life, right? Because it's not really asking that much of you. The way we were Christians, you was in and out of church 3-4 times a week. It was the center of your whole world. Well, you went on a deep, deep search. And then I think when you found that wanting is when the doubt crept in. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Um. Yeah. Listen, I don't think there is such a thing as a true Christian. There
Hmm.
is no such thing as a true Christian, but it's easy to make someone second guess themselves when you say to them you weren't a real Christian to begin with, right? Make
Yes.
them, it's as though we want to poke holes in your story, right? No, you can't be for real. You can't have left this beautiful, darling religion of mine. So, how can I make you feel bad about your reality? It's by telling you that no, you weren't even one of us to begin with, right? So it's that trying to invalidate your experience and to invalidate your position, right? But they cannot tell you who the real one is.
When I
They
first
can't tell
started,
you that.
yeah, no, I agree. When I first started this journey, that was like the one goal I had for my conversations with Christians, was for them to understand that I genuinely was a believer and that I genuinely didn't believe anymore because I found the evidence lacking. And I couldn't, find sufficient reason to believe my faith. Like, that was the goal, because you always were hearing you just wanted to sin, you were hurt, you were never a real Christian, all this stuff. I just wanted them to understand I was a real Christian
Hmm.
and I just don't believe it anymore. But I think that's hard because that brings the cognitive dissonance front and center for them. And so I think it's a defense mechanism that they go to with with that particular form of gaslighting.
That, I mean, if there is such a thing as a real Christian, all Christians are not real Christians. How many of them live by the dictates of their book? 100% of the time. How many?
Oh yeah, that's, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
Christians are
Yeah.
out here. They're out here lying.
Yes.
Their leaders
Yes.
are out
Yes.
here
Yes.
every time caught in one scandal, usually sex scandal, right? The
Yes.
Christians, they lie every day. They fornicate. They lust. They, you understand? And
Yes.
every day they go back to their God. God, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. It's
Knowing they're going to do the
you
same
know
thing.
they go back. So even if you find what a real Christian looks like, all Christians cannot live. Look, the bar of Christianity is set so high that nobody can attain
Yes. Yes.
that level. Hence why they say that the path that leads to the heaven and the Jesus kingdom is very narrow, because not everyone will give. It's very tight. You
Yes.
can't, if you're to live the true Christian life. It's impossible.
And they're not laying hands on people, healing them. They're not giving away all of their wealth.
You know, you know.
There's so many ways we could call their bluff, so to speak. But yeah, I agree. There's none of
It's
them
the no
are
truth
really with it.
Scotsman's fallacy.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. However, yes.
Bullying. It says bullies don't always use
All
physical
right,
violence.
bullying.
Constant criticism, raised voices, and threats are forms of emotional bullying. How often have you been in church and you've heard about what a terrible sinner you are? And you've heard the pastor get excited and raise his voice and shout about the Lord and about salvation and repentance? How often have they got on the pulpit and pointed their fingers at the crowd and said, your time's coming.
Mm.
You could die any minute. And if you don't have Jesus in your heart, you are going to suffer an eternity in hell. Constant criticism, raised voices, threats. That's like the Baptist sermon every Sunday. I mean, that's what everybody experiences every Sunday in the Baptist church. And it goes on to say, in intellectual bullying, someone tries to claim the role of subject matter expert, making another person feel inadequate and dependent on them for information. Again, you have Sunday school teachers, you have pastors, you have church leaders. They've done the studying. They've gone to college. They've gotten the degree in theology, or they've been chosen by God. God has spoken through them. They've done the studying. So you just need to sit down. You just need to listen, and you need to accept what they're saying. They are claiming the role of subject matter expert over something that is like inherently subjective, which is spirituality. Even prop yourself in a position where you are the authority or the expert on spiritual matters seems very, very bizarre to me, because spirituality should be a personal thing. But for some reason, church leaders have propped themselves up to be the authority on these spiritual matters, and you're supposed to listen to them. Guilt and sympathy.
All right, so
Yes. This took me back to church when I was growing up, when they will come and tell you, oh, things like, if you die in your sleep tonight, where are you going to spend eternity? And I would think to myself, whoa, if I go to sleep, because you hear about people who actually die in their sleep, and so, gosh, that used to terrify the life out of me if I went to sleep. So even, at least when I'm awake, I can control things. I can say I'm sorry. But if I go
right.
to sleep and there is a sin, because don't forget, God searches the heart, right? And they used to tell us then, look, you can ask God for forgiveness, that's fine, for the sins that you've committed. But if there are sins that you have forgotten about, those will be played on the big screen on Judgment Day. They will be brought back to your memory. So even when you think that you have said sorry for the ones you remember, you also have to ask God to bring to your remembrance the sins that you have forgotten. Because those ones, you still are not forgotten, they're still not forgiven you, right? So they will tell you that you should you know, it's and then I'll be there thinking, gosh darn it, on Judgment Day, my whole entire life will be played on that big screen, and everyone, because this is what they told us Judgment Day is going to be all about. The billions and maybe billions, and I don't know how many, we're all going to stand there waiting to watch everybody's life on the big screen, right? So all your secret thoughts, all your the things that you were sneaking to go and do, we will see it on the big screen. But now I think about it, how do these people know about that? Who told them about this Judgment Day? How do you know what's going to happen on Judgment Day? Who made you the boss over us to tell us about this big screen and heaven is going to be like this? Heaven is going to be made of gold. Have you been there? How do you know heaven has gold on it? On the floor. Crazy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we don't treat it like a threat. We should that's a threat.
It
You're
is.
threatening me. And but again, it's like the gaslighting. That's the core of the religion, is a threat. And it's amazing that so many of them uh reframe that as a loving relationship, right? Oh, I'm so in love with God. I'm so in love with Jesus. I love him so much. Again, no part of love and I'm afraid this person will torture me forever go hand in hand.
Hmm.
And I it's tough because what other situation do we find somebody in a relationship under threat of violence like that and we accept it, right? If you had a coworker who described their new boyfriend this way, you'd be telling that coworker they need to get some professional help, a new boyfriend, the police department, and likely all three. Because nothing about this relationship is okay. But there's something, and I kind of want to maybe tie it to this next one. So I might let this next segment go because I haven't watched this. So I don't know, but I feel like that's part of the bullying that happens is we have to feel so bad for these people, and that this is such a sensitive topic that we literally are sort of silenced, right? Like we're not able to meet it with the same type of opposition we would in any other circumstance. And that has lately been making me feel bullied. I've actually been describing it as being bullied, just being bullied into being silent.
We need to call it for what it is. Enough of giving religious people and religion a pass. We were bullied. We were lied to. We were manipulated. We were gaslit into believing things that there is no evidence for. The
Mm,
character that was ingrained inside us, there is no evidence of that character existing. We need to call it for what it is, right? We're
yes.
telling people that there's a world out there, spiritual world, and this and that, and you speak so authoritatively about something you've got no clue about. There's something wrong with you. There is
Mm,
something wrong with you,
mm,
and you need to keep that to yourself.
yes.
Leave the rest of us alone until
Yes.
you can prove, if there's any evidence for what you're talking about. Enough of giving these people passes. Enough of, oh, okay, it's just there. I'm free to believe whatever I want to believe. Yes, that's fine. Believe whatever you want to believe, as long as you keep it to yourself.
Mm, mm. That's the final word on that, y'all.
It says many people are highly susceptible to guilt. Me. Some even go as far as to punish themselves in response to things they feel guilty about. Me. Emotionally manipulative people prey on this vulnerability. They may play the victim or remind you of past favors. They want to make you feel a sense of obligation or sympathy that they think will make them more likely to get what they want. May remind the victim of past favors. How often are they reminding you about Jesus on the cross? How dare you spit in the face of Jesus when you sin? Every time you sin, you drive a nail into his hand. Now, like I said, a lot of people watching this might be like, you never said that to me in the church. And I think that's great. This isn't going to apply across the board, but I guarantee there are a lot of people that have heard these exact same things in their Christian churches, where they are being perpetually blamed for the sacrifice of Jesus. That the sacrifice of Jesus is constantly being thrown in their face to make them thankful, to make them grateful, to make them obedient, to keep them a Christian. Because if you keep throwing it in their face and saying, look what Jesus did for you, he died for you, then you're going to live in this perpetual state of guilt and this need to pay him back. It's only human nature to feel guilt when someone is constantly throwing a favor they did in your face and saying that you're disrespecting them every time you commit a sin, every time you mess up or you make a mistake or you think a bad thought. You are driving the nails into Jesus's hands. The church wants you to feel guilty because you cannot become a Christian if you don't first feel guilty for not being a Christian in the first place. They have to use all God has done for you, this life God has given you, the life Jesus gave up for you in order to guilt you into staying pure in the religion. Imagine if the religion was so enticing, if it was so good, if it was so inviting that people wanted to be a part of it just because it felt good to do it, not because they felt guilty for not doing it. Not because they felt guilty for not believing in God or wanting to worship Jesus because he died for you. The entire message centers around guilt. And if you have to guilt someone into loving you, that is the definition of manipulating love out of someone. You're not really manipulating them into loving you. You're manipulating them into being obedient to you. To me, it just seems like the God of the universe would have a better way at approaching you and getting your love from you without having to guilt you for it, right? And so when I look at this and I see the doctrine and just how it's presented, you don't even really need a pastor to guilt you into this religion. You just have to read it and see that the whole point is I'm supposed to feel really grateful for this thing that this guy did 2,000 years ago, a guy I didn't even know, who did it to act as a loophole to circumvent rules that he himself created. It's really kind of crazy when you think about it that way and think about the fact that Jesus never had to die. He could just forgive you. You know, he could just say, hey, maybe come to me and ask for forgiveness anytime you do something really bad. Or maybe he could have just said, hey, anytime you do something bad, ask forgiveness from the person that you hurt. And then you and I will be on good terms. You'd think it would come down to that, but it really doesn't. It's all about God and having to ask forgiveness from God and having to worship God and be thankful to God for what he did for you. And the bottom line is none of us really asked to be here in the first place. Nobody really consented to being born. And so to put us into the system against our will and then expect us to be grateful for it does feel very manipulative. What about?
All right, so she went somewhere different, and I wanted to go somewhere really weird, but I'm gonna tie them together. So check this out. So what I was thinking about lately is I've been feeling a lot of the criticism about me an atheist, probably because of the way my show is, my style of presentation, and I'm very direct about the fact that I'm like, nope, I think it's time to, I say it's time to push the button. It's time that I'm about ending religion. I actually would like people to leave their religion. And I think sort of doing the most we can to curtail the harmful influence of religion in our world is sort of one of the pressing social issues of our time. And I've been feeling like a lot of pushback from atheists over that. Like, I've been feeling like atheists don't like that, right? Like, a lot, because a lot of us are just like, nope, leave him alone, like let him be. And I've started to feel like they use, and y'all see where this is going, compassion and guilt to bully me into like not wanting to have a strong voice towards deconversion. The idea is like they feel really bad for the religious person. You know, they're a nice person. They don't think they're bothering anybody. And so out of sympathy for this person, I should not speak out against their religion, or at least not directly to them. And that makes me feel bad, because it makes me feel like, first off, like, am I bad? Like, am I a bad person for like wanting to voice my displeasure with this religion? And right, and I have to like remind myself, no, like I went through this. I'm a victim of this religion. Of course, I'm gonna speak out against it. If you don't want me to speak out against Christianity, keep your Christianity over there, because like any other victim of something or someone, when that thing becomes the subject of conversation, we're gonna let you know, oh, that thing, my life all the way up. You want to hear about it? But what I think also gets lost in that is what Christy was talking about. See, I was going to go over there, which is somewhere different, but they actually tie together, because we have to remember that the person that quote unquote wants to hang on to their religion, the person that people are trying to protect from people like me, they were coerced into it with this guilt, right? About what God's done for them and the sacrifice Jesus made, and God created you, and look at the trees, and how could you, betray him, and all of this type of stuff. So I just think everybody's in a bad situation, and we should just be trying to end it. We should, I don't, it's a dance I have a hard time doing, but I'm gonna let Esther get in here.
So I think this is a struggle we will always we will continue to face. It's how do we pass our message across? How
Mm,
do we say the things that we want to say without sounding judgmental, without being hateful, without being toxic individuals, right? But
mm,
then the people who did this to us, who indoctrinated us into religion, who brainwashed us, they weren't thinking about us. They never gave us any thought. We were of the least of their thoughts. All they cared about was to as long as we get them in. So on the one hand, we have to consider how we come across. We now have to stop and think, oh, how does my message sound?
mm-hmm.
Oh goodness, hopefully this isn't as hate filled as I want it to be. But you know something, there is a message after all. The God these people claim to speak about does not exist. There's no I don't know how to be nice about that, right? I
Right,
don't know
right,
how to uh um debate my way out of that. I've got to
right,
tell
right.
you as it is. Your God, there is no evidence for, right? However you try to dance around this whole subject of God, because some people, I've someone has actually approached me one time I was on a live stream, and they said, "Oh, your topic is quite interesting," and they were then atheists, right? Saying, "Are you saying there is no God when you should be saying there is no evidence for God?" And okay, I mean, think however you feel
Sure.
about
Yeah,
the topic.
right.
Look, there is no God. Well, if you understand where I'm coming from, the gods that we've been presented with so far, there's no evidence for those ones. In the future, they might present a God I've never come across before, and eventually we would learn about that God. But yeah, I do try. I do try to be to show empathy when I'm passing my message across. I do try. Sometimes I'll get it wrong. Sometimes, yeah, I would hit the nail on the head. But however, the message comes across, as long as we're telling the truth, we're not out here sugarcoating things. We're not out here, rubbing some things in truth and then some in lies, and
Right, right.
presenting it. It's what we're saying is the truth. There is yeah, it's not there.
Yeah.
There was something that she said about Jesus Christ, right? Being told about Jesus dying for you.
Yes.
The whole death of Jesus on the cross is very abusive. It's very toxic. It is barbaric. It is the worst possible stories anybody could have written, could agree to, could
Mm,
believe. The
mm,
idea that someone died for you. What kind of person do you have to believe that an innocent man died for you, and somehow you think that that is a good thing, that somebody who shouldn't have died, shouldn't have even, whatever happened with him should never have happened, and now you think that that's a good thing. You're happy. You can sleep at night knowing that somebody who should never have died actually died for you, and not because there was really any reason, but because daddy needed a sacrifice. And so he gave himself up to daddy for you. And you think that that's good? It's one of the most immoral things that I have heard of. And that's why the whole Jesus narrative and how he came to save you, Jesus loves you, it is, excuse my language, but it is absolute bullshit. Bullshit of the highest order.
absolutely. Um, yeah, no, it is. And I have a hard time with people who have like a in sort of a Christian mutual admiration society with the Bible. Like, I don't think it's a beautiful story. I don't think it's a good book. I don't think it's like like there's a great moral message behind it.
Yeah.
It's barbaric, and I do
Yeah.
think it's time to people to be more honest about that, especially given all the harmful things that people do with it. Um, Not sure, we lost Esther for a second, but Maya made a couple great points here. The pushback isn't on behalf of the Christians. It's understanding that many people aren't in a position to do it. I think that's with regard to like having sort of deconversion conversations with loved ones. And she said, at least not without detrimental effects to themselves. And I love this. There needs to be a focus on a movement rather than individuals sabotaging their lives independently. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with this any more than I do. Like, this is we really do need to have this movement, and I actually think it'll be much faster because that's the way to get it past the critical mass where people will start deconverting on their own because they'll start to want to keep up with the time, so to speak.
And considering that Jesus, he was forgiving sins without the death on the cross. There are stories in the Bible where Jesus will come across someone who comes to him for help, and he would say, "Oh, your sins are forgiven you." If Jesus was already saving people without dying on the cross, there was no need for it. Thank you. There was no need for Jesus, right? We need to start saying this, right? Jesus did not need to die on that cross. His daddy really needed him to die. His daddy was set to have that guy just completely annihilated. That's what daddy wanted. Because if he was The reason why he was on that cross was so that people are forgiven. But he was doing it already before getting on that cross. Then what was the point? It's pointless.
Yeah, yeah. And Christopher Hitchens always makes this point that if you were there, you'd have been obligated to stop it.
Listen, just why?
Yeah,
And then they
absolutely.
expect you to worship the God that did that. No thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great point. All right, let's we're chugging away
About
here.
withdrawal. It says the simplest example of this kind of emotional manipulation is the silent treatment when someone punishes you by ignoring you. I think back to all of the times that I felt that God was not there, that I was praying, I was reaching out to God, I was desperately seeking connection with the divine because I felt very alone and I felt very afraid and I had a lot of doubts and I really needed God to come in and to kind of soften those fears and those doubts. And I felt like I was only getting further away from God. I wasn't getting a sign. I wasn't hearing his voice. I wasn't getting anything that I felt was coming from him to assure me of what I believed about him. And I would go to Christian leaders and I would say, I'm not feeling it. I'm not hearing from him. And so often I would have Christian leaders tell me, or I would think back to sermons or Sunday school lessons where they would tell me that our sin keeps us from receiving God's messages or receiving connection with God. That whenever we feel as though God is distant from us, that we should really look internally because it's probably something we're doing to block God off. And I think about that now and I just think it's so childish and bizarre that the creator of the universe would literally give you the silent treatment because you're just doing too many things he doesn't like. And the sin is usually so minuscule. It's usually that you're like, you have a bad attitude or you're not grateful enough or you're getting frustrated easily or you said a cuss word or you spoke out of line. It's usually not something that's so terrible. You're not going around murdering people. You're just kind of wrapped up in your life, just like we all get wrapped up in life. And God gives you the silent treatment because you're not being good enough for him. You're not doing enough for him. You're not focused enough on him. You're not giving him enough of your attention. And so he acts like an immature high school girlfriend or boyfriend and just gives you the silent treatment and ignores you until you do what he wants you to do. Again, I feel that is the very definition of manipulation. If someone's giving you the silent treatment in a relationship because they are trying to get something out of you, get you to react or respond a certain way, that is a manipulation of your emotions. They're withholding themselves from you in an attempt to manipulate your emotions and get something out of you. And I don't know how that would be any different when a God does it. In fact, I think it's worse because I would think God would have more emotional maturity than to give people the silent treatment when they're not focusing all their attention on him. What about love bombing? When I left the little Southern Baptist church that I was raised in my whole life, goodness. I went to a more progressive, non-denominational church. It was a bit more charismatic in nature. And I went there for probably about a year or so. And that church was probably the epitome of love bombing. They were a lot less fire, hell, brimstone, and they were a lot more Jesus daddy loves you and he wants to embrace you in his arms and cuddle you all night long. It was that kind of church. It was the kind of church that called God daddy. And I don't want to get into the dynamics of that right now. But I just remember being in this church and having the music building up and the lights going and everyone's singing and swaying and hands are in the air and the preacher is talking about how much God loves you and how he wants to be there for you and he wants to have a relationship with you. And it's just this unloading of spiritual chaotic love, in this building where they're just pouring it out on you, right? And what I really liked about what this article says about love bombing and unearned closeness. It says showering a new acquaintance with praise and affection is a common tactic of emotional manipulation. It's even used in cults. An emotional manipulator may try to bind you to them through manufactured vulnerability or artificially accelerated relationship. And I really like that it said unearned closeness, because think about how often they talk about how much God loves you, but you don't deserve it. And I think that's a really key point, a really key part of the manipulation is God loves you. He loves you so much, but you really haven't earned this love. You really don't deserve this love, but he loves you. Now, take yourself out of the spiritual situation. Put yourself in a relationship with a person, a friend, a parent, a romantic partner, any of that. And imagine that person saying, I love you so much, but you really don't deserve my love. I love you so much, but you haven't earned it. I love you despite how terrible you are, how much you frustrate me, how much distress you cause me. I still love you. That would feel very manipulative. It would feel very abusive. It wouldn't feel like real love. Why is God expecting us to employ cognitive dissonance when we walk into the church and separate how we're treated there from how we're treated in our everyday life? God puts humans here on earth. He puts them together and expects them to develop these social interactions and to get used to these social interactions. But then when you walk into the church, you're supposed to forget everything you know about how you're supposed to behave socially with other people in order to accept how you're treated by God in the church, which is usually not very kindly. And the last one here is.
All right, I've got a bunch of. Go ahead, Esther. What man? Love bombing and the silent treatment.
Oh, my thing is, how do people know what God wants?
Mm,
If y'all have never proven the God to exist, how is it that y'all are so detailed about how God wants us to worship Him? Oh, he's gone into hiding because of your sins. Oh, Daddy wants to love you. Oh, they know so much about an entity that they've never seen, they've never touched, they've never felt, they've got nothing, but they seem to know everything about this character, but
yes,
still can't produce him. That's where the abuse comes in, right? You can
yes,
see that whichever church you go to, whether it's the one where they're love bombing you or the other one where they're, trying to make you think that you are less
yeah.
than,
The hellfire and
right?
brimstone. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is their idea of what they would want to see happen to you, right? This is
Mm,
what they have thought about. Maybe this is how they have interpreted their religion to fit
yes,
their narrative now, right? This is their own idea, because all of that cannot be coming from a God, because if it was coming from God, it will be universal. Everybody will be singing from the same hymn sheet, right? When it comes to Christianity, everyone will be saying the same thing. But love bombing and the other, listen, these are all just what they want to see. Anyone that comes and tells you, "Oh, God did this to you. He's hiding from you. He's this." That's what they would like to see happen to you. They're just telling you.
mm,
They're just telling you what they feel about you. That's the undertone. Listen very well. Just if it's a pastor telling you, you didn't come to church, and so when you go to him and you're trying to get him to pray for you for something, and then he's like, God is saying the reason why you're going through what you're going through is because you're not faithful in the church. That's the pastor trying to tell you that, look, this is what I think is the reason for what you're going through, and this is what I would wish is happening to you. Well, this is my opinion anyway.
Yeah, I was imagine, like, we all know somebody who their father isn't in their life, or their father abandoned them, or they don't even, people. My grandmother didn't even know who her father was. Um, Imagine that person saying something like, "Oh, my daddy loves me. He's always there for me. He provides for me. He does it," and that they've never even met this father. It would just break your heart, right? And then imagine if, when things weren't going their way, they said, "Oh, daddy would have helped me out on this test, but I haven't, I ate too many sweets or something," right? So, blaming themselves, it would just break your heart. The other thing I was thinking about is, the frustrations I feel a lot of times dealing with Christians as a non-believer, I think reflects the same manipulations that happen to them as a believer. In other words, like, what we fear dealing with them is the same type of manipulation that kept them in the church. So, love bombing and sort of the silent treatment to me go hand in hand, right? Because that's what happens. Like, if you break a relationship with somebody, you leave the church, all of a sudden they go silent. Right. But when you were in the church, you were part of the community. You were invited to everything. Everybody was loving on you. Everybody was celebrating you. And now it's just you and the crickets. And I think even for a lot of us that are afraid to even let the people in our life know that we're non-believers, I think that's what we're afraid of. Like, we're not afraid of, like, some blow up fight or some knockdown drag out argument. We're afraid they just won't talk to us anymore because they don't know what to say to us. So it can be really devastating, to get the silent treatment from anybody. But when it's sort of paired in a relationship where you were having this extreme loved on relationship, it makes it even worse.
Exactly. And I think church can be a very dangerous place for a lot of people, especially the vulnerable people, especially children, especially people that, cannot really speak for themselves. It's the in here, right? It's not so much physical, but in here, the manipulation, the psychological abuse that goes on when they say to people, "Oh, come as you are to church. Oh, it's a place for the sick, a place for the wounded, a place for the bruised." In most cases, you go in to church, you're semi, this still can function
Some
a
loose
bit.
ends. Yeah, yeah.
Some cases, you come out and you are 10 times worse than you went in,
Mm.
because now they have managed to get in here. They tell you to come. We will offer solutions. We will, God will make things better for you. But at what cost? At what cost? By the time you're done in that place, they fleeced you out of your money. All your time has been given to that place. You come away from church and you can't say, "This is while I was in church, look, this is the benefit I got from being in the church," right? They take everything from you in some cases. So it's worse for some people going to some of these establishments.
Yeah, yeah, it's super harmful. All right, we got one more. All right, let's wrap this up.
Is constant judging. The manipulator does not hide their manipulation behind humor or good fun. In this case, they're open about judging, ridiculing, and dismissing you. They want to make you feel like you're doing something wrong, that no matter what you do, you will be inadequate to them. Does that sound familiar? They only focus on negative aspects and don't offer constructive solutions. I think that one kind of goes without saying. I don't even feel like I really need to elaborate on the constant judging, because I think anyone who has stepped foot in a Christian church has experienced some form of judgment. And the fact that the entire doctrine is centered around the fact that God is going to judge all of humanity, does judge all of humanity for the things that they do, it just falls right in line with what we're talking about here. This manipulation, this way of getting people to do what you want, to believe what you want, to think what you want, by judging them, criticizing them, love bombing them, gaslighting them, making them feel inadequate, making them feel as though they don't know enough, they're not smart enough. This breaking down of the person, of the self-esteem, of what makes a human being, completely just destroying it so that you can just put God in its place. Just God. Whatever that church's God looks like, which is going to be very different from every church down the road. They're all just kind of developing their own brand of spirituality. And they're bringing people into the house of God. And they're toying with their emotions in order to keep them in the pews, in order to keep the offering plates full, in order to maintain this Christian agenda, which is everybody get in line, everybody believe what we say. We have the word of God. This is how it is. There are no other options. You cannot question. You cannot scrutinize. You cannot walk away. And if you do, everything about your experience was invalid and not genuine. You really lay it out like that when you compare these manipulation tactics with how the church treats its people, with your experience in the church. Do you see how the church is just utilizing very common manipulation tactics to keep everyone in their congregations right where they want them to be? And that's the goal. The goal is to gain clarity and to look more critically at how the church is treating people, how people are interacting within these Christian circles, how the doctrine is affecting your mind and the way your brain operates and the way you treat other people and the way you expect people to treat you. It's all about breaking you down. It's about manipulating your emotions and keeping you subservient. Thank you so much for joining me today.
All right. Now I gotta say, this is one, Esther, I still struggle with. I don't
Really?
think that, yes, I'm constantly judging myself in a negative fashion. And I feel like it's something religion, put on me that I'm not sure how to get off or deal with. It's really tough. But yeah, I think it's because I grew up in a family that was so serious about it, and you're always falling short, right? From original sin to every lustful thought you've ever had, breaking curfews. Like there's the thing that I think is so interesting when we talk about original sin and some of these sin struggles. I think they're just made to make sure that everybody feels constantly guilty.
Yes.
There's sort of like, the list is long enough that nobody isn't on it, right? Yeah.
I feel like when you come away from religion, you never fully deconstruct, right? You, I don't think that's something that would you can say 100% I am fully deconstructed. Now, and also, a lot of us didn't have people we could look up to. A lot of us are having to create our own journeys. We don't really have people who we can look to and say, okay, how did you do it 10 years ago when you were deconstructing, right? When you were coming away from religion. There really is nobody to guide us on this path, right? So a quick question for you,
Sure.
Pocket Locker, just quick question for you. So all your life, right? I don't know how old you are.
37, baby.
Okay. So for 37 years, have you been a Christian longer than you being an atheist, what's the portion
Oh,
of
that's a
that,
good.
the years? How many years would you say you were a Christian? What's the percentage
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Christian and non-Christian?
Most of my life, I still feel like I was a Christian, but it's getting to feel like I've been an atheist now for I don't know, a decade or so. It's been a long. But it's hard for me because I feel
Oh
like it
yeah,
was a
get that.
process, right? It wasn't like I don't have like, oh, I remember the day and then I mark my calendar or whatever. But yeah, probably let's probably say 60-40 split or something like
Right,
that.
right. So 60,
70-30
40,
or something.
60.
Yeah.
So the majority of your time here on earth, you were a Christian,
Yeah.
right? And so you can't expect yourself to have been fully to have erased all that 60, 70%.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No,
It
that makes
takes a
sense.
long time to
Mm,
undo what was done to you, right? Because
absolutely.
when you think about childhood indoctrination, and this is why I'm so against teaching children about religion. It's something when you can get a child to believe things, right, and they grow up as adults taking those things they were indoctrinated into. They've never, as adults, how many of us go and check, okay, those things we were told in church, how many of those things were really true, right? Not many. We just go along because everyone else is doing so. So I feel that we as people who have come away, first you need to pat yourself on the back. You have done an awesome job. What you have done, my goodness. Not many people can do what you have done.
Yeah,
Not many people will
yeah.
make it out, but you made it out. So you must pat yourself on the back. You must congratulate yourself. You must validate yourself and say, "Well done for the job that you did," right? And also give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. Some days it will be hard. Some days you will second guess yourself. But my goodness, I feel like if I could, any person who made their way out, if I could give you a hug, if I could give
Yes.
you an award, if I could just, because you would not understand what you have done for yourself. You have emancipated yourself. There will be people that they will look to you and think, boy, I wish I can just be as vocal as you. I wish I can be as bold as you, right? And so, yeah, and that's where the dangers of religion, the dangers of indoctrinating people, brainwashing people, is that even when freedom is staring at them in the face, even when the shackles, right, have been taken off, you're still bound by those. You still think that they're there when they're not there. I think it was a saying by, I'm not sure who was it that said, I could have freed more slaves if only they knew they were slaves, something along those lines. I don't know how,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I would have freed more slaves if the people had known that they were slaves.
Mm.
So yeah, we need to just give yourself grace.
I,
um I'm talking to myself as well.
yeah, me too. I'd always
I'm
say
saying
that
this.
I'm more proud of the fact that I left the religion I was raised in than I am that I got a PhD. Because it's more
Wow.
because it's rarer, right? You can go to school for PhDs. It takes a long time, but there's schools for that. This thing
Mm,
of deconverting. I mean, it was
mm,
just a
mm, mm.
crazy journey. And if you look back at the way my life was growing up, it's you know it almost seems like a miracle. Right? It's just
Who is teaching us how to deacon? Who's teaching?
yeah,
We have to go out there looking for the information, right? And this is why when I see somebody who's come away from religion, I know that you've put in effort, you've put
yeah,
in work,
yeah,
because
exactly.
it's not a one day thing. It doesn't come just like that, right? You've done some work. And so yeah, I think we need to um just big up ourselves a
Yeah,
bit more.
yeah, absolutely. This was so fun, Esther. I really wanted to do this with you because we both. I was like, what can we talk about? And I was like, well, we both care about deconversion, and let's just get into it and let's talk about why, faith is manipulation. But I host a show called The Blackout with Uncle Bobby. We're just
I love
we're
Uncle
working on
Bobby. Oh,
rescheduling it. So
he is hard hitting.
yes, yes. But he always talks about how it's similar to an abusive relationship, right? And the points he makes is that there are sort of four things we can point to for an abusive relationship, but they're all irrational beliefs. Irrational belief that the abuse is your fault, the irrational belief that you find your purpose in your abuser, the irrational belief that your abuser is omnipresent, and the irrational belief that if they don't get you, they'll get your friends and loved ones. And
Hmm.
you can say all those things, and then you can literally say, no, this is happening in Christianity. And so if I want to come at it from that angle, if I want to talk about it as an abusive relationship, I have clarity to do that. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not doing this to insult people. I can genuinely say I'm concerned about this, and these are the things that I see in this religion that concern me. And I hope we've done that today with manipulation, right? Where we're not saying we're experts or doctors or anything like that, but we talk about manipulation a lot in religion, but we do so in a way that I'm sure religious people probably find insulting, or a lot of us, it doesn't really have a lot of clarity. It's a feels thing, right? And this is hopefully saying, no, these are the actual, this is the definition of manipulation. This is what this is what manipulators do in manipulative relationships. This is how they create power dynamics. And we didn't touch on philosophy, and we didn't jump into the theology. We were really talking about the behavior, right? And so hopefully now you can have conversations about this behavior is manipulative, and here's what we mean when we say that. Yeah. I'm gonna let Esther close us out, but I will say this: the reason I went with the question of the day as well is if you had the power to deconvert one person in your life, who would it be? So one person put in the chat that it would be Darth Dawkins, just for fun.
Oh goodness.
um,
Darth Dawkins. Oh, thinking of somebody. Maybe G-Man. You may not know G-Man, but
oh, we know G-Man, yeah.
you know him.
Yeah, I know who that is. But the reason I asked that question is because for most people, it was somebody in your life, like it's going to be a friend, a family, maybe somebody in your professional life, or someone close to you, or someone who would ideally be close to you. And I think that shows that this is something that affects our lives in a way that we kind of can lose sight of sometimes. It gets easy in this community to be like, oh, we're the atheists, they're the Christians, and we have the debates, and we're, concerned about politics and lots of different things. But I think this sort of brings it back to home, right? That there are people in our lives that are still in this religion, and it still affects them in a way that we would be happy to see not happening. And so, hopefully this is just an opportunity for people to think about that. And, that's just something to keep in mind going forward when you have these conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, Esther, the floor is yours. If you want to give us any closing thoughts on today, and then we can wrap up. This was awesome.
Oh, can we close our eyes to pray, please?
This is everybody bow your heads.
Bow your heads and Let's pray to my God, the Lord Mandingo. Oh, pocket locker, can you stop laughing? That's my God. I mean, I worship the one and only true God, the Lord Mandingo himself. Come on, what's wrong with you?
Oh, I'm blushing like a schoolgirl.
All hail.
Oh man. Oh man. It's too much. Oh, it's too funny. Esther, thank you so much for doing this with me.
You're very welcome.
I'm such a huge fan, and this is super cool to do this. We definitely have to do this again. Also, sign me up for the whatever. I actually went to school to be a dating coach at one point.
What?
It's true story. Yeah. And I have my master's degree in biological anthropology. So sign me up for your dating thing that you were
That's
talking
coming.
about
That's
doing.
no. So I will tell you on TikTok, right? I've done that on TikTok, and even the last one I did was on it was streamed on YouTube as well. Can I tell you, as at yesterday, we have 2 matches already.
Really?
Yes, yes,
Oh
two
my
matches.
goodness.
Yes, yes.
Wow. You're making
To just
connections.
we were just, just an idea. Okay, how do we connect godless people, not just on a chit chat? Because it's one thing to talk about God, and then it's another thing to go back in your life where it's so lonely and everybody religious. you know
Yes.
how beautiful it would be to have somebody in sharing your bed with you, and the least thing that you all talk about is God. You
Yes.
talk about everything else except God. And so
Yes.
it was just something what started, and the way it was done is such that no pressure at all, right? If you're looking for a mate, if you are looking for someone to connect with, you come and tell us about yourself, what you're looking for, and anybody who's interested can slide in your DMs. And let me tell you, there
Oh
have been
my
sliding
goodness.
there have been people sliding in DMs.
They've
And
been
yes,
sliding in the DMs. Oh my goodness.
absolutely. So just yesterday, learned about the second sliding
Second match.
action,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
going well. So let me tell you, I'm just very excited. So yes, but this time around, we're going to, because I called it godless dating, but this time around it's going to be godless and queer dating. we
Okay.
we we can't leave our
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
absolutely.
LGBTQ community. It's everybody. We're not leaving anyone behind. So yes, if you yeah, all I would say is just watch this space. It's coming back, because listen, we've got to connect you all. So that's the
Yeah.
people who are interested.
Well, yeah, I'm down to help out. I would love
you
to. That
know
sounds like
so
fun.
you'd be interested? Yes. Okay,
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
fantastic.
I want to host with you. Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
So yes, we will
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll connect. Yeah. Absolutely. Um So yeah, gang, that's gonna do it. That was so much fun. Thanks for doing this. I'm so happy to that we were able to co-stream this. I think my one black friend will be back with us next week. But thank you so much, Esther, for gracing
You're
us with your
welcome.
presence. This was super, super awesome, and we'll definitely do this again.
Absolutely.
All right, gang. We'll see you next time.
Okay, everyone.